Coming up in our newscast tonight, President Moon Jae-in touches on the importance of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's visit to Seoul. He stresses the unprecedented event would send a comprehensive message to the world about the chances for peace on the Korean peninsula and the regime's willingness to denuclearize. Washington and Beijing agreed to a 90-day ceasefire in their trade spat deemed necessary as the tariff tit-for-tat hurt both economies. While the two giants use that time to negotiate, countries like South Korea must prepare for possible changes to come. South Koreans born last year are said to live 82.7 years on average, nearly 4 more years than a decade ago, according to the latest statistics data. Experts say the upward trend is driven mainly by South Koreans taking better care of their health, as well as improved medical care and technology. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Che. President Moon Jae-in spoke to reporters during his flight to New Zealand. He expressed hopes North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's visit to Seoul will happen before the year is up and highlighted the positive impact such an event will have. Moon also mentioned that U.S. President Donald Trump expressed willingness to listen to the North Korean leader's wishes if it helps the denuclearization process. Hwang Ho-jun has our top story.
If the North Korean leader comes to Seoul, as it's hoped he will by the end of the year, President Moon Jae-in says he has a message for him from President Trump.
김 정은 위원장과 함께 남은 이 합의를 다 마저 이행하기를 바라고 또 김정은 위원장이 바라는 바를 자기가 이루어주겠다 뭐 이런 메시지를 전해달라는 당부를 하기도 했습니다.
But apparently, President Trump doesn't necessarily mean concessions or relief from sanctions. Rather, President Moon said it could be things like the scaling down of South Korea-U.S. joint military drills or non-political exchanges like sports and cultural events. He told reporters, though, that whether or not Kim Jong-un comes to Seoul is completely up to him, and they'll have to wait and see what happens.
김정은 위원장의 서울 답방이 이루어진다면 그 자체로서 이 세계에 이렇게 보내는 평화적인 어떤 메시지, 그다음에 또 비핵화에 대한 의지, 또 남북 관계 발전에 대한 의지 모든 것을 다 담고 있는 것이라고 봅니다.
When asked whether there are differences between Seoul and Washington in their respective North Korea policies, the South Korean leader dismissed the idea.
트럼프 대통령과 여러 차례 만나고 또 이렇게 통화하고 하면서 이제는 상당한 신뢰, 그다음에 우위가 구축되었다. 그런 생각을 가지고 있거든요. 이렇게 한미 간에 뭐 불협화음이 있다든지 뭐 이런 부분에 대해서 도대체 어떤 근거로 그런 식의 이야기를 하는지 모르겠어요.
President Moon said the next Kim-Trump summit, expected to take place early next year, will be an important opportunity to speed things up, though he said he's not at all concerned about the slow progress made over the past month or two. Instead, he expressed optimism that the process will turn out just fine. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Turning our focus to day one of President Moon's state visit to New Zealand now, he met with the country's Governor-General and touched on a number of topics, including bilateral ties. During the talks, the duo found common ground on the goal of making their societies inclusive. Shin Se-min files this report from Auckland.
President Moon Jae-in on a state visit to New Zealand sat down on Monday with Governor-General Patsy Reddy for a working lunch, where the two discussed ways to further boost bilateral relations. There, the president praised the Pacific nation's social integration policy, embracing the native Maori people, something he says mirrors a policy he's pursuing in his own country.
아까 총독님도 말씀하셨습니다만 세상에서 가장 중요한 것은 사람이라는 마오리족 부족 속담이 매우 인상적입니다. 원주민과 서로를 포용하여 사회 통합도 이루었습니다. 진정 어린 존중과 배려의 자세를 배우게 됩니다.
President Moon added that he hopes the two countries build on the idea of pursuing inclusivity. That sentiment also echoed by Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, who said in a statement that the two nations have a shared domestic policy in that respect, on which they will be looking to exchange views and experiences. The Governor General expressed support for President Moon's push for peace on the Korean Peninsula and said that the president has made a good start despite the long journey ahead. Earlier in the day, the South Korean president visited New Zealand's Tomb of the Unknown Warrior, where he paid his respects. Still left on President Moon's schedule here in New Zealand is a summit meeting with Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern and a joint press conference afterwards. In those, as the South Korean leader is likely to discuss issues of economic cooperation and efforts on North Korea, an area where New Zealand has welcomed President Moon's efforts to resolve the long-standing challenges. 신세민, Arirang News, Auckland.
Back here in the nation, the government released a 5-year development plan to move inter-Korean relations forward. Seoul is hoping to declare a formal end to the Korean War and create an institutional base for sustainable cross-border ties. Oh Jung-hee sheds light on this plan.
Pushing forward with peace and denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula and forming an institutional framework to preserve warm inter-Korean ties. That's the plan South Korea released Monday, a blueprint of its future relations with North Korea for the next 5 years. According to Seoul's Unification Ministry, South Korea will declare a formal end to the Korean War and hold 3-way or 4-way talks with relevant parties to sign a peace treaty. But the government is aware that it may not be able to declare the war's end within this year as it initially hoped for, and has said there is flexibility on how and when the declaration can be made. Within the next 5 years, Seoul plans to sign a peace treaty with North Korea that institutionalizes their relations. It's to keep inter-Korean exchanges sustainable and prevent them from being affected by ups and downs in their relations. Steady dialogue will be maintained between the leaders of Seoul and Pyongyang through regular summit talks and hotline calls. Running the joint liaison office in a stable manner is also a must, with future hopes of opening more offices in the Korea's capitals. The Seoul government also hopes to encourage North Korea to engage further with the international community. It aims to provide support for cultivating manpower in the north and for holding international conferences that involve Pyongyang's experts. It's also to seek ways to cooperate with international financial institutions to deliver development aid to the north. Humanitarian aid for the north will be provided irrespective of political situations. They'll be mainly for emergency operations, control of contagious diseases like tuberculosis and malaria, and support for babies and pregnant women. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Seoul's foreign minister met with top diplomats from across the globe, including North Korea's official head of state Kim Jong-un, while in Mexico over the weekend. Kang Kyung-hwa was attending the inauguration of Mexico's new president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador. According to Seoul's foreign ministry, the meeting was not planned, and the two officials naturally engaged in dialogue at the event in a positive atmosphere. Minister Kang told Kim that she hopes the North Korean leader's visit to Seoul happens soon to further strengthen the peace process on the peninsula. Kim replied by saying the two Koreas should continue working together so that their ties can stay positive. U.S. President Donald Trump confirmed he is ready to hold a second summit with his North Korean counterpart within the next few months, perhaps a sign of a new start in the nuclear negotiations between the two sides, which was stalled in recent months. Park Ki-jun gets us up to speed with the developments.
U.S. President Donald Trump has reaffirmed that his second summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will probably take place early next year. Speaking to reporters on his return trip from the G20 summit in Argentina, Trump said he expects the meeting to happen in January or February. He also said 3 locations are being considered for the summit, adding it will be held, quote, within plane distance. Although he did not elaborate on whose plane he was referring to, it raises speculation the next Kim-Trump summit will again take place in Asia. Asked whether Kim would visit the U.S., President Trump only said he will at some point. Kim Jong-un's private jet is only capable of flying to Asian countries that are not so far from the north. The remarks bring countries such as Vietnam, Mongolia, or Indonesia under the spotlight, as all three have North Korean embassies. President Trump's comments are seen as a positive sign amid a stall in the denuclearization talks between Pyongyang and Washington. Watchers say it reflects the Trump administration's unwavering commitment to maintaining dialogue with the North. The South Korean government has also taken the wheel in finding a way to restart the two sides' negotiations, as seen through the Moon-Trump summit last week. Where working-level negotiations failed, top-down negotiations are now adding momentum to North Korea diplomacy. Now, it's up to the North Korean leader to make a decision. There's only a short period of time until the proposed date for the next North Korea-U.S. summit, and experts say only Kim Jong-un's will can make it happen. 박희준, Arirang News.
Seoul's parliament convened a plenary session this afternoon and introduced the original draft of the government's 2019 budget proposal. This comes after rival lawmakers failed to narrow their differences and missed a legal deadline to reach a deal on the budget. The National Assembly Speaker had said he would use his authority to convene a plenary session on Monday unless the party set a new date, which they could not agree on. The session of Parliament is now closed, and the plan is to wait for rival parties to complete their deliberations. But it's unclear when they can strike a deal and hold a vote, since there are still areas of contention, including spending for job creation and inter-Korean projects, as well as a tax revenue shortfall. The ruling Democratic Party and the government met this morning to discuss ways to ease market saturation for convenience stores. The two sides saw eye to eye on the need to take into account the physical distance between stores, as well as the market characteristics of different regions. They also agreed that owners should be able to close down their stores more easily in times of financial difficulty by providing exemptions and cuts to penalty fees. The Fair Trade Commission will unveil more details on the government's plan tomorrow. Washington and Beijing agreed at the G20 summit in Argentina not to slap more duties on each other for now. According to the Korea International Trade Association, the decision may have been made because both countries are facing an economic slowdown. Ko Ryun-hee explains further.
Korea International Trade Association announced on Sunday their analysis on why the world's two biggest economies have agreed on a temporary ceasefire in their trade war. The association says the 90-day truce was necessary because of the two countries' economic situation. For one, China's GDP growth slowed to 6.5% on-year in the third quarter, down 0.2 percentage points from the second quarter, and marking the weakest on-year quarterly increase since 2009 during the global financial crisis. Kita added that consumption and investment in China is also slowing down. This comes after the U.S. imposed 25% tariffs on $50 billion worth of Chinese technology goods, including machinery, semiconductors, and autos in July and August. The economic situation is similarly grim for the United States. Major news outlets reported that plunging sales in automobiles and houses were signaling an economic slowdown. For instance, the Washington Post reported last month that General Motors layoffs and plant shutdowns suggest that the U.S. economy may be starting to slow down. Kita says the overall situation might have forced President Trump's hands to negotiate with Xi. A manager at Kita points out another important issue in Saturday's agreement: an existing timeline.
The most important part of Saturday's agreement is the 90-day timeline on the bilateral negotiations. This means that the United States won't wait forever until the two sides reach an agreement.
Meanwhile, although Korean companies earn more time to prepare for the trade war, Kita says the government and companies should prepare for additional tariffs possible next year. Ko Ryun-hee, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump says China agreed to reduce and remove tariffs on American cars as a result of a trade war ceasefire. The tone of engagement over confrontation is a welcome change for the global economy overall. But some remain cautious that the truce may only exist to help buy time. Kim Ji-yeon zooms in on the issue.
Following the trade war ceasefire between Washington and Beijing announced over the weekend, U.S. President Donald Trump hails the truce once again through his favorite means of communication, social media. President Trump tweeted on Sunday that China had agreed to reduce and remove tariffs on U.S. cars below the current 40% level, The tweet carried the same promising tone he used on board Air Force One when he told reporters on his way back home that it's an incredible deal that would have a positive impact on farming, referring to the trade truce he reached with his Chinese counterpart, President Xi Jinping, on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Argentina. Washington agreed to delay a tariff increase on more than $200 billion worth of Chinese imports to 25%, from 10% originally planned to go into effect on January 1st, while China agreed to resume purchases of U.S. farm and energy commodities. The two leaders also agreed to negotiate over structural changes to China's policies on technology transfers, intellectual property, and cyber theft. However, concerns are still hovering over the notion on how the two biggest economies will iron out their differences, including ways to narrow their trade imbalance, as they are already presenting different renderings of their agreement. The White House said 90 days of truce was agreed upon by Washington and Beijing to settle such differences, adding that if no deal is reached, tariff rates will be raised to 25% as previously planned. Chinese officials, as well as multiple state-run media outlets, have made no mention of those specific concerns or the 90-day deadline, raising speculation that both nations could end up locking horns again 3 months from now. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Temporary employees often earn less and have lower job security than permanent ones. It's a concern that plagues Korea's job market. To alleviate this issue, the Moon administration has been working to convert temporary workers in the public sector to full-timers. On such efforts, the Bank of Korea says more permanent workers could help boost overall labor productivity. For details, let's turn to our Kim Hye-sung.
If the proportion of permanent employees in the workforce rises by 1 percentage point and that of temporary workers goes down by the same margin, overall labor productivity could go up by 0.23 to 0.56%. That's according to a joint report by the Bank of Korea and Hanyang University, which compared 29 OECD countries' labor structure and productivity-related data between 2006 and 2015. Korea has continuously fared low among OECD countries in terms of labor productivity at $67,000 per worker as of 2015, lower than the OECD average of $85,000. It shows that in 2015, the proportion of permanent workers in Korea was 57.5%, up from 50% back in 2006, but still far lower than the OECD average of about 74%. The report said hiring more permanent workers could enhance productivity as temporary workers have lower work engagement and continuity that negatively affects productivity due to job insecurity and lower wages. But the report cautioned that if the percentage of permanent workers leads to higher payrolls that outweigh the value of added productivity, labor costs could put a dent on corporate profits. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
South Korea's Air Force kicked off a large-scale combat exercise which will continue through the week. According to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the drills are carried out to maintain high level of defense readiness and improve the mission capability of pilots. The JCS added along with the solo training, there will also be a combined Air Force drill between Seoul and Washington at the battalion level or lower. This comes after the Allies suspended one of their largest joint military exercises, Vigilant Ace, back in October to support ongoing diplomatic efforts with Pyongyang. A 6-member delegation from China's provincial government visited South Korea on Monday to meet their counterparts here in the nation for this year's third round of future-oriented exchange program between the two sides. During their 5-day stay, Director General level officials from Liaoning, Jiangsu, and Shandong provinces will visit the Cheongwade, Old Palaces, and other tourist destinations. It marks the first time in 3 years that China has sent Director General level officials to the country. According to Seoul's foreign ministry, the visit is expected to further boost exchanges between the two countries' provincial governments. Data from South Korea's Statistics Bureau shows infants born in the country last year are expected to live an average of more than 80 years. The numbers improved in all age groups under 90 as well, a trend driven mainly by continued advancements in health care and technology. Oh Soo-young help us look beyond the numbers.
South Koreans are expected to live longer than ever before. According to Statistics Korea, an infant born last year is expected to live 82.7 years, which is 0.3 years longer than 2016 and nearly 4 years longer than the decade before. Excluding South Koreans aged 90 and above, the average remaining life expectancy increased for all age groups by roughly 0.3 years. A 40-year-old woman is likely to live another 47 years, while a man of the same age is expected to live 41 years more. Compared to the 1980s, when the average life expectancy for men was 8 years shorter than that of women, the gap has now been reduced to 6 years, 0.1 year lower than last year. Women are now expected to live until they're almost 86 years old, while men are likely to live until they're nearly 80. Both figures beat the OECD's average figures at 83.3 years for women and 77.9 years for men. In fact, South Korean women have the third longest lifespan among their OECD peers from 35 other countries.
It seems Koreans are doing more to take care of their health, and the level of medical care and technology is also increasing, which helps early diagnosis and treatment of diseases. This is also true for men who seem to be drinking and smoking less than before and doing more exercise. So their death rate has been declining.
Although the country's lifespan has been seeing an upward trend, Statistics Korea stresses there's also been an increase of deaths caused by pneumonia. The data agency says the respiratory condition is now the third most probable cause of death for South Koreans born last year, following cancer and heart disease. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Bohemian Rhapsody became the most popular musical film in South Korea. After selling more than 6 million tickets, it still continues to attract local moviegoers. According to 20th Century Fox Korea, the film starring Rami Malek as the legendary Freddie Mercury, the lead singer of the band Queen, surpasses the previous record for a music film set by Les Miserables, which sold 5.9 million tickets here in the nation. Having hit local cineplexes some 6 weeks ago, Bohemian Rhapsody yielded the top box office spot to the recently opened Korean movie Default, but still ranks #1 in real-time ticket sales. Named after one of Queen's greatest hits, the movie depicts the life struggle and genius of Freddie Mercury, as well as the band's rise to worldwide stardom. Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, the rain has finally cleaned up the dust that's been hanging in the air since last week.
That's right, Daniel. The rain that's been coming down all day has stopped in most regions for now, but it'll start again later tonight with thunder and lightning at times. Up to 40 millimeters of more rain is expected in the southern regions and also on Jeju, while other areas, mainly in the central region, will get less than 5 millimeters until tomorrow morning. By tomorrow afternoon, it will be mostly cloudy with the sun trying to break through, and we're in the crosshairs of more yellow dust as well. And meanwhile, Tokyo is looking at unusually warm weather as well, reaching into their low 20s. Checking out the readings in detail, the morning in Seoul will top to 7 degrees Celsius, while Busan and Jeju starts into the mid-teens. And the dusty air will be cleared away by the cold gusty wind that's expected to blow during the day. So it will feel much colder than the actual readings, Seoul reaching to 10 degrees. And the mild weather is over after today. By Wednesday morning, though, Seoul's low will drop down to -4 degrees and plunge further down to near -10 degrees by the weekend. And Seoul will stay partly cloudy throughout the rest of the week, while some regions will have rain or even snow in the forecast. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
These are the stories we're following at this hour. From all of us here at Arirang News Center, thank you for watching.